those store shelves went empty, it was a wake up call to convenience America. Where the food's always at the supermarket. I don't ever have to worry about being this. This is the United States. We got food up the wazoo. And boy, when those store shelves went bare, we had calls from people that were panicking.
Welcome. I'm Chris Martinson, and this is Peak Prosperity. Welcome, everyone, to this Featured Voices podcast. I'm your host, Chris Martinson, and today, really pleased to have back with us today the poet laureate of modern farming, Joel Salatin. He's here back with us again to share his wit and wisdom. I'm very excited because, as some of you may know, I bought a farm, or at least a rural piece of property that Evie and I are busy turning into a farm. And of course, we do that through our actions. So we've got goats and pigs and cows, chickens and things like that, and a garden, and we're just working as hard as we can. So I thought we'd check in with Joel, maybe get some tips and talk to him about what's going on. Can't wait for this conversation. Joel, welcome back to the program.
Oh, thank you, Chris. It's always a delight to be with you. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. By the way, my Bible for this whole thing has been this one. You can farm.
Okay.
I like the optimistic title.
Yeah. We've sold a pile of those. I'll tell you, they're all over the world.
Well, it's a great book. I mean, it's like if I had a dad who farmed or something, or a grandfather or somebody who was going to pass their wisdom on, that's what's in there. And
right.
Yeah, but it just caught me, just the sense of place and just how much is involved. Like every page there's something on there. But when you go through I think 4 pages on woodlot, it's just like there's so much to know about how you measure wood and how you make the most of it and which sticks you leave and how you know that each little area is different and there's shade and soil to consider, all that. And it's just, I get that sense of place that just must come from what I'm embarking in here eventually.
Sure. Yeah. That's right. There's a lot of context in decision making. That's for sure.
Yeah. So who did you write this book for, do you think?
You.
Okay. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Well, I mean, how many times have you ever heard somebody who, was dreaming about farming? How many times do they get told, oh, you can't farm, it doesn't make any money, it's too hard, it's too long. I mean, there's every kind of reason to not, that it's impossible. And so I wrote the book, You Can Farm, to encourage people. I mean, this is a viable vocation just like any other. And I mean, it has parameters, it has rules of success, but yeah, it's all about, encouraging folks to embark on what I think is, just a wonderful, arguably the oldest vocation in the world, and to go ahead and embark on it. I think it's wonderful to be encouraged that, you can farm. I mean, I've had people emphasize different words. You can farm, you can farm, or you can farm. It can be read any of those kind of ways.
I think that we're at the beginning of a very large back to the land movement. I think it's going to eclipse the 60s. We've already seen COVID has accelerated that process. We've got people moving out of cities in droves, and people already have yards and things like that. So for those people who've maybe not thinking of farming, but would sure like to begin, transforming what property they do have, what's a good place for somebody to get started who's literally they've just moved out of Brooklyn. They live in Ridgefield, Connecticut. They've got a couple acres now.
In my view, the first thing is to start feeding yourself. Don't even think about making money with it yet. Just start feeding yourself. What do you like to eat? What do you like to eat that can be grown locally? I mean, if you're in, New Jersey, you probably won't grow bananas and coffee. But other things that you like to eat, berries and meat and vegetables and things like that, strawberries. I mean, just the number of different things that can be grown in most regions is pretty large, and so the idea is to feed yourself first, because the money you save buying food is actually worth more than things you sell, because if you replace expenses, you actually don't have taxes on that. So you can start to, if you're working a job, you can put more money in savings. You can invest it differently. But the point is that you can back off your living expenses, which are after tax dollars, and you can replace those with before tax dollars by feeding yourself. Every dollar you don't have to spend is worth $1.30 because you don't have to pay taxes on it. And so feeding yourself first. And of course, that also gets you familiar with what you're growing. You'd be surprised how many people want to farm. They start growing something or producing something they're not familiar with. They go out and try to sell it. They try to sell this thing, and well, how many ways have you fixed squash? Well, I don't know. I don't even really like squash, but you should buy my squash. I mean, that's crazy. So, if you're going to sell something, you got to be familiar with it. How do you cook it? How do you can it? How do you freeze it? How do you dehydrate it? How do you, what do you do with it? And so feeding yourself and experimenting with your own recipes and food is a wonderful way to get familiar with the product that down the line will grow into a commercial enterprise.
I completely agree. And as well, people have started to figure out, and we've talked about this before, that maybe the industrial food agriculture system isn't delivering the highest quality products to them anymore. And I think one of the awarenesses that's come up for people with all this illness going around is that what you put in your body matters, and being healthy is a function of the quality of the food you're putting in there. So a lot of people are catching on to that right now. And I can't think of a better way to eat high quality food than to grow it yourself.
Right. There's nothing fresher, more nutrient dense than to grow it yourself. You know exactly where it came from, what went into it, all those kinds of things. Not to say that there isn't really high quality stuff you can buy, but if you grow it yourself, if you're familiar with really high quality stuff, then that becomes standard about which you can compare what you're growing. And if you've seen good quality stuff, well, my kale doesn't look like that. Wonder how my kale can look like that. All right, well, here's how I can make my kale look like that. And so yes, that's a real viable way to ensure your own health. I think with this whole pandemic thing, I mean, the problem is everybody's sitting around waiting for a vaccine, and I'm waiting for the day when somebody pushes Dr. Fauci aside on a microphone and says, "Okay, America, tell you what, we're gonna spend 1 week working on our immune system. Let's build our immune systems for a week. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna not eat. We're not gonna drink any soft drinks, sugary soft drinks. No Cokes this week. We're not gonna go to McDonald's. We're gonna cook from scratch in our kitchen and go to farmers market and supplement your own stuff. And we're gonna cook from scratch. Not gonna eat processed stuff. Everything we eat's we're gonna be able to read the label, and then we're gonna get 8.5 hours of sleep every night, and we're gonna drink 3 liters of water a day, so you get hydrated, and we're gonna exercise into at least a light sweat 20 minutes a day. We're gonna spend an hour a day out in the sunshine, and to top it off, we're gonna forgive everybody we hate. That's about 6 simple things that if did it as a nation, just imagine where our immune system would be. It would go through the roof. I mean, I didn't mention things like stopping smoking and things like that, yeah. Or not taking drugs. I'm not even going to. I'm just saying, for the average person, this is a recipe for real immunological enhancement. And to me, that's far more important long term, whether or not we develop a vaccine.
I've been doing these YouTube videos on the whole pandemic and talking about science and all that. It's been fun. But every single video I end with 2 admonitions for people. 1, plant a garden, right? You get the salutary effect of working outside and reconnecting with nature and all the good that comes from that, and eating better food. And then the other thing is I tell people, boost your immune system. And if you could just take a little vitamin D3, but you said get an hour in the sun, I'll take either of those. Why don't we have, do you think, some nationals are, because there's two tracks, right? You could say, well, sit and wait for a vaccine, but while you're doing that, we should also be, here's the other stuff you can do. It's simple, cheap, effective. I haven't heard anybody say that at the national level yet.
No, the word, all the only thing close we hear is comorbidity, but I haven't heard anybody, at the high level, talk about building an immune system ever. I mean, it's like it's not even in the discussion, and that's well, it makes you feel like it's a conspiracy, but it's not a conspiracy. It's just a fraternity of ideas that overlooks the most obvious thing, which is what you can do for yourself, rather than what you have to be dependent on for somebody else. Vaccine makes you dependent on somebody else, but if you can build your immune system, then you can fix it yourself. And we live in a time and a national narrative that's all about how to create additional dependency, not how to create additional independency.
I like the way you put that, a fraternity of ideas, because we all know about fraternities. They might overlook things from time to time.
Well, fraternity of ideas is a lot more, diplomatically plausible than conspiracy. As soon as you say the word conspiracy, then, you're, all right, well, he's a Rothschild, Illuminati, the Masons, and they just he's a nutcase. And so I use fraternity of ideas in order to kind of, make a bridge that's credible and doesn't turn people away.
In the scheme of attracting versus repelling people, how would you say the awareness of and attention on you, your farm, and everything you're doing? Is there more or less? Where are we in your story?
Oh, there's more. My goodness, I've never had done more podcasts, been more media, and our own food. I mean, at our farm, I mean we went into the year with our regular 6 to 7 months of inventory and freezers. We're in the pasture meat business, and boy, I'll tell you what, this thing hit, and we were wiped out in, I don't know 2 weeks. When those store shelves went empty, we were literally wiped out in 2 weeks, and we've been struggling to regain ever since. We're not completely caught up yet, and we're still turning some customers away, some new newbie folks. But boy, it was serious, and it last year, July 4th, we began a kind of a gentle rollout of national shipping. We ship across the anywhere in the continental U.S. and it had been rocking along. It was doing fine, but boy, when this pandemic hit, I mean, it just exploded. And our joke here at Polyface is, boy, if we'd have known a pandemic was this good a marketing strategy, we'd have ordered up 3 years ago. I mean, it's been unbelievable. But I tell you, it truly has stimulated a conversation about food quality and about immune function. I mean, people are coming into the farm store. They're getting on our website. They're saying, I've heard things like, I'm never going to go back to the supermarket. I don't trust the big food system. The food system let me down. There's, and it's even leading to discussions. What's fascinating to me is I'm having discussions, two kinds of discussions. One is with people that are, I call it Y2K on steroids. The prepper movement was launched, at Y2K, and it's still viable, but today, there's a lot of people that think the wheels are going to fall off. I mean, economically, or with our liberties, our ability to choose to go and come and things we want. I mean, start talking about, you won't be able to get on an airplane unless you have a certified yellow vaccine card. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And so, as the cities are burning with the, racial unrest and the violence and all that stuff. So there are more and more people feeling like we might be heading into what I call the wheels falling off. And they're talking about survivalism. How do we survive? And there's kind of, in my view, there's kind of two ways to survive. One is to, flee to the hills of Montana and live in a cave and be a mountain man, a hermit mountain man, and, trap your deer and make rope out of sinew and all that. The other is to build what I call an agrarian community bunker. Where you actually develop a local community that's eclectic enough to have people who know how to build things, grow things, and fix things. If you're surrounded by friends or collaborators who know how to grow things, fix things, and build things, you can do a lot. If stuff. But neither of those, whether it's the agrarian, community bunker or the hermit mountain man, both of those require some preparation time. You can't just wait till the wheels fall off and say, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. You've got to put some attention on it in the first place. And so we're seeing this massive exodus from the city, incredible interest in buying a farmette, a couple of acres somewhere. This kind of can I get into a community? In fact, here with us, we've actually gotten calls from people who want to come and live near us because they feel like, with our sustainable practices, we'll at least be the last guy standing. And there is some comfort in being the last guy standing. You hope by the time you're the last guy standing, some smart person has figured out how to fix whatever the big problem is. The other thread that's developing is just a concern among people that they're going to get left out of the next food crisis. When those store shelves went empty, it was a wake up call to convenience America. Where the food's always at the supermarket. I don't ever have to worry about being this. This is the United States. We got food up the wazoo. And boy, when those store shelves went bare, we had calls from people that were panicking. And now what's happening is some of those people are coming back. Okay, now we've been able to service them, and they're saying, okay, so how do I get on your first class team? Can I pay some sort of an extra tip price to get in your top 10 profile? So if this ever happens again, you're going to take care of us before you take care of anybody else. And that's it's a fascinating conversation on the one hand, but it's just it's the entertaining of a funny scheme that farmers haven't entertained. I mean, the idea that I could designate 100 people who pay me $1,000 a year for nothing more than to guarantee that there are 100 people I'm going to take care of no matter what. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a pretty neat way to make another $100,000. Yep. If you don't do it fraudulently, which of course, I'm sure some farmers will do. But anyway, those are two threads: the survival thread and the subscription thread. How do we make it through? B, how do we make sure you take care of us and I'm on your short list, not your long list? Those are two threads of conversation that are brand new in the food farming sector, in the last 4 months.
Fascinating. I've got a bunch of questions around that. So I'll tell you if I could get some feedback and advice on our own strategy. So Evie and I, we move into this brand new town. The town's been wonderful, open arms, all this. We find out that the farms used to be 40 and 30 and then 20, and now we're down to like 5. We're the first people who added cows, not subtracted, in a long time. So the local electrician up the hill, great guy. He's running Black Angus as well too, and he had an old tractor for sale. He was just dying to get rid of. So we bought it because I felt like, well, I'm making a connection with this guy. It's an old Alice Chalmers 175 crop hustler, probably born before I was, and still works, all of that. But he was just thrilled to be able to, feel like there's young blood. And that's weird calling me that. But, he's about 70, and I feel like it's a pretty common story.
Yes.
But just knowing that we were not just talking about it, but we just came in and we just did it. We just got cows and we just threw them in a field and we worked it out, and, we're learning, making mistakes, but at least we're doing something. I felt like there's a part in this book where you said, they're watching you, right? And this guy is watching. So while he was here redoing some of my electrical stuff, I made sure I was working extra hard on those days. So when he was paying attention, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah. So it felt to me like if somebody is going to move into community and you want it, you got to know that people are checking your character out, and they're watching for not just how hard you work, but how smart you work and all that, right? I think they're really paying attention. But I found piece of advice you had in the book is everybody loves being asked a question, so if I don't know something, I'm asking these guys what to do. Yeah. Seems like
one of the best ways to, create a bridge, a diplomatic bridge, is to ask a person what they think. I mean, people love to tell you what they think, right? And everybody loves to be asked. Everybody loves to be asked, what do you think about this? And you might have tons of ideas. You might disagree 100%, but just the idea of asking, what do you think? That's a bridge builder. And boy, when you're the new boy in town, regardless of your age, when you're the new boy in town, you don't want to burn bridges. You want to build bridges, even with people who might not agree with all the things you're doing. You might not agree with all the things that they're doing, but you don't want your neighbors to be enemies. You want your neighbors to be friends.
Well, we're busy trying to build those bridges, and I feel that same urgency you were talking about, though, with sort of the people who are thinking, gosh, I would love to know where my food's coming from. It's got a little sort of a survival tinge. I got the same vibe as everybody else. And for whatever reason, I feel like my job, number one, is to build soil as fast as I possibly can. And I'm doing everything I possibly can to think about how to do that. How would you go about fixing a field that needed quick amending?
I'm not a big fan of soil amendments. I'm a big fan of biological clocks. I'll tell you, back years ago, when we started back almost 60 years ago, we had soil tests done by a leading lab in organic agriculture, and we put on some amendments that they recommended, and we saw nothing. There was no change. I've put on different concoctions that people say this is the cat's meow, whatever, and very seldom do I see a big difference. Why? Because you can't mineralize your way into fertility. The other half of that equation is biological activity. You've got to get soil life. You've got to get the actinomycetes and the mycelium and the gibberellins and the azotobacter. You've got to get all that soil life working. What does that soil life need? Well, it needs decaying organic matter. It needs humus. And so the way nature has built more soil on the planet, nature doesn't put on bags of minerals. It doesn't put on bags of fertilizer. It doesn't put on this stuff. How does nature build soil? Nature builds soil with organic matter, and that organic matter is generally either manure from animals that have decayed the organic matter, or organic matter or biomass that decays itself, either by leaves falling off the trees. The main way is the roots. So the deepest soils on the planet are under prairies. They're not under forests, and they're not under shrubs, because forages, grasses, clovers, forbs, they have the fastest metabolism of solar energy into biomass. Now, it's kind of counterintuitive, because you look at a forest and you say, wow, look at all that carbon. but that's carbon that's accumulated over 70, 80 years. If you took your lawn clippings from a square yard and you were able to put them in a bag and you could put them in a utility room and kept them for 80 years, and then in 80 years you brought all those bags from that square yard out and put them on that square yard, trust me, you'd make a believer out of you. You'd realize, wow, grass is much more efficient at converting solar energy into biomass than trees are. But the problem with grass is that it grows fast. It starts, it grows, and then it dies. It goes into senescence. So the reason for the herbivore, the reason the planet has so many herbivores on it, bison, prairie dogs, alpacas, llamas, wildebeest, giraffes, water buffalo, reindeer, caribou. I mean, I'm kind of going around the planet. The reason the planet has so many herbivores is to prune, as this grass reaches senescence, to prune it back to go through this rapid juvenile metabolic time period. The problem is that if you keep it real short, it never gets out of first gear. And if you let it go into senescence, it turns brown and quits collecting solar energy. So the fastest way to build fertility is to mimic the patterns of herbivores in nature on perennials. So how did nature build soils? How did the Midwest get its fertile soils? It did it with perennials, not annuals, perennials and herbivores that were moving. They didn't stay in one place. They didn't stay in a field. They moved. So you've got, 180 acres, and you've got how many acres of pasture? Let's say you've got 80 acres of pasture. Well, those 80 acres, the animals on there have to move on those 80 acres with pruning and rest periods to simulate how herds of bison used to move across the American prairie, being pushed by wolves, coyotes, and flies and fire. And so they didn't have fences, so they could go all across the continent. And you've got fences, so that's why on our farm, we give the cows only 1 day's paddock for a day, and then we move them every day about 4 o'clock to another paddock using temporary portable electric fencing, so that we define where they're going to be, and that way they're only on one spot for 1 day, and then it has a rest period until those plants regrow. Now, what's interesting is that when the grass plant is allowed to get a head of steam on it and get some biomass accumulated, when it gets pruned, the plant goes into shock and prunes off. It sloughs off root mass commensurate with what got pruned from above. In other words, if you could lie down and look across the soil horizon, straight across the soil horizon, there is bilateral symmetry of biomass between what's above the ground and what's below the ground. So whatever a plant has above the ground, there's that much root underneath. So when the pruning occurs to the plant, it automatically sloughs off. It actually jettisons root hairs and root mass to create bilateral symmetry with the top, and it takes the energy from those jettisoned root hairs, go up into the core of that plant, and are the savings account, the energy savings account, to send forth the new shoots until they get enough of a solar panel to start metabolizing solar energy again. That's the cycle of the plant. And so the fastest way to build fertility and build soil is with perennials, herbivores, and strategic movement across, to prune across that landscape. That's the cheapest, fastest way to build it. And that's what we've done. Now, if you want to augment it with compost, if you really want the fastest way to build fertility, run chickens on it. Chickens, chicken manure will, it'll fix everything. Running chickens on it, of course, is one of the fastest way as well. There, what you're doing is you're importing grain to feed the chickens to get the manure. And this is not an anti-nature kind of thing. Realize that one of the reasons for animals in nature is to eat from the fertile valleys and then move to the ridge tops to lie down, ruminate, and defecate, and actually transfer the gravitationally moving biomass, minerals, twigs, rock that moves into the fertile valley to take that fertility and move it back up on the hilltop. That's the only way nature has to defy gravity. So animals in the ecosystem, in a natural ecosystem, are perhaps the most democratized, egalitarian form of fertility on the landscape. Without the animals and without predation and without the movement patterns and the flying patterns of birds, without that, we would have completely denuded ridge tops, and everything would be concentrated in the fertile valleys. So when I say, you're bringing in a grain for the chickens to boost your soil fertility and restart the biological activity, that is a very a normal animal contribution to the to your landscape situation.
Thank you for that. And this has been, to me, one of the big eye-opening things that's come over the last few decades is that mimicking of the natural movement of the herbivores and all of that. And so that's what we're trying here. We've got we've got a 10-acre field. 6 is good. 4 is like pretty iffy, sensitive fern and poison ivy and stuff. So we'll see what we can do about that over time. But
right.
But right. we're basically putting them onto somewhere around 1/3 of an acre per day and just shuffling them along,
That's exactly what you're talking about. And what you'll see is as you shuffle them along like that, whether it's 1 day, 2 days, whatever, the more often every time you move them, that's a test. That's a test. And so if you move them 30 times in a month, in 1 month, you have 30 self-audited tests. Well, guess what? Your learning curve goes straight up. If you're just putting them on a field and leaving them there, you never get a test. You don't learn anything. But if you're moving them, then you actually learn and you develop skill and expertise very, very rapidly. And that's another great reason to go to the extra effort of moving them every day, because you're going to get very familiar with how much they eat, how much they need, what the recovering pasture looks like with, at this time of year, that time of year, this kind of care, this move, that rest period, all those things are going to go into your experience bank. And you can't Google experience.
Every single part of the field is slightly different, and I found that the cows are just lazy. You put them in a paddock and they really munch down that first spot they get into. So you gotta push them to the back and then they'll work forward, naturally. And just, there's all the subtlety to it, it's a lot of fun. And,
well, the animals always eat dessert first. They never eat their liver and onions first. They always dessert first.
Yeah. I had this fancy plan. I put the wire into the forest because I thought, well, they like some cover and that's fine. But I had this plan. They were going to eat all the poison ivy on the edge. I'm like, nah, not really. Well, I got some belties that are doing okay at that, but the other ones are like, nah, they're too fussy. Fussy cow. So I'm finding myself really enjoying it a lot. And I know this isn't a solution for everybody, but I feel like more and more people, whether it's chickens or goats or, there's lots of ways for people to interact with animals. But to me, it just felt like putting animals back on the land was exactly what the land wanted. Everything I'd read, but I could just feel it. It was depleted and it wanted hooves and it wanted manure and the grasses needed to be a little challenged. And I can see it coming back. And I can just see it in 2-3 years. It's going to be just a completely different arrangement.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, what people don't realize, many people don't realize, is that North America had way more pounds of animal. Well, the world had way more pounds of animal on it 1,000 years ago than it does today. If you take all the weight of the humans on the planet, all the weight of feedlot cattle, factory farm pigs, factory farm chickens, you take all that weight, the planet had more animal weight 1,000 years ago than it does today. And that should give us all pause. That should help us to realize, whoa, maybe we're not as smart as we thought we were. And so these natural principles of moving, mobbing, mowing, and they are principles of abundance. They're not principles of scarcity. They're principles of abundance. The only reason people think that they're principles of scarcity is because people aren't mimicking that natural movement template. They throw them in a field and just leave them in this big acreage, continuous grazing all season long, or they put them in a feedlot and feed them corn from Ogallala aquifer irrigation water. I mean, there's from monocultures. There's a million ways that we humans are clever enough to mess it up, and so we can have soil building, water building. We can increase the commons and feed ourselves at a commercial scale, but we have to fundamentally change the techniques that we use.
I was really taken with a presentation I just watched a couple of weeks ago by Gabe Brown. I'm sure you know.
Right. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And doing his cover cropping up there in south or north. Anyway, one of the Dakotas. He's got only 15 inches of moisture to work with a year. I couldn't believe his pictures of his fields. It just completely changed my sense of. To me, that's dry land farming. 15 inches, my gosh, that's nothing. Right. And he's working it out, and so and he's working at scale, 3,000 acres, I think, his operation. So that tells me that we can do this stuff. But fascinating, he showed pictures of his farmer who's been right next door to him for 30 years, watching his success, hasn't adopted it yet. What's the barrier to adoption there?
Well, same thing here. I mean, we get 3 times the production on our fields, and our neighbors call us bioterrorists, typhoid Mary, nuts. There are few things as threatening. There are few things as threatening, Chris, as a new paradigm. Wow. I mean, it threatens what you've been doing. It threatens what you believe. It threatens your credibility. A new paradigm threatens everything, and we know what we know. I mean, around here, I move the cows every day. Now, when you move your cows every day, goodness, I don't have to. It's not a rodeo. I mean, I go out and call them, and they come to me. I open the electric fence. They walk through. I close it. That's moving the cows. But when I say move cows to my neighbors here, and they're all wonderful people, but the phrase move cows, I mean, they're thinking, 3 4-wheelers, 2 pickup trucks, all the aunts and uncles and cousins in a day, stomping through the brush, and they probably still didn't get them all in. It's moving cows is a horrendous, terrible thing. And so the very notion of you move your cows every day, that they can't get past their perception and experience of that phrase, and that's what paradigms are like. That's why they're so powerful. But yeah, Gabe, what he's doing, I mean, realize his 15 inches of rainfall are equivalent to our 30 because he's in the north, and you don't get the evaporation that you do here. It doesn't get as hot, and you get a longer winter. So the northern soils are always more forgiving than here. And the other thing is to remember that in the Dakotas, they were more than 100 years. They have more than 100 years less European abuse than ours here in Virginia. So we're literally working on subsoils. I mean, depending on who you read after, anywhere from 3 to 8 feet of topsoil washed out of the Shenandoah Valley since the Europeans came. Where Gabe is in the Dakotas, it hasn't been nearly that. He's still on soils that are more like what was there before the Europeans came. And so that natural virginity to it makes them respond quicker and be more resilient. They need a little less. They need a little less remediative babysitting than in the East here, where our soils have been abused for longer.
That was one of my criteria here, was finding soil that hadn't been too heavily abused, and that really complicated the search.
Right. Sure it did. Sure it did.
Because all our high quality topsoils here have been industrially just destroyed.
Sure.
Well-meaning people.
Absolutely.
I mean, just if you ever ran a chemical test on them, it would be you'd have to get a couple of PhDs to know what all those byproducts were. It's just
absolutely, yeah.
It's something. It's something. So when you talked about food security before, are you at all? What's your concern factor here that we might experience some sort of breakdown? I know that when COVID first hit, we had hundreds of thousands of migrant laborers who would come in who weren't planting the central valleys of California. So I was telling people, veggie prices are probably going to get expensive and all that. But are you concerned about any larger threat to the system at this point?
Well, I think if there's one thing the pandemic showed, it was, you see my cat coming in here.
Yeah. Hi, cat.
You can appreciate that with this whole pandemic thing, it actually exposed the fragility of the industrial system, which is a very segregated system. And segregated, of course, is a very strong word, but nature is highly integrated. There's no waste stream. It's a highly integrated system. What we have today in our industrial food system is a very segregated system. The fertilizer comes from one place, the crops are grown in another place, the animals are in another place, the manure goes another place, the food is eaten in another place. And so you have what nature and history would have put together in an intricate symbiotic umbilical, if you will, and it is ripped apart in very oppositional, asymmetric, disconnected systems, and that is so anti-nature that those of us who believe nature bats last, we don't know when it'll break down or what will actually be the final breaks it down. But the way to bet is that horse is going to break down at some point. And I mean, it might be, it might be a big disease. It might be, the pandemic obviously broke it down because right now in the U.S., the only place where thousands of people congregate every day in a cold, damp environment, shoulder to shoulder, is in large processing plants. Mm-hmm. I mean, even automobile manufacturers are not in a situation like this. If you ever see those pictures, those assembly line workers, there's a lot of artificial intelligence. I mean, goodness, they're 15 feet apart, on this assembly line. But boy, you look at pictures of a processing plant, it's a cannery, a meat processing plant, and I mean, it's a lot. And guess what? Those people, many of them, if not most, are foreigners, and I'm not xenophobic, but those foreigners are often living in different kinds of quarters, eating cheap food to save nickels to bring the rest of their families over here to land of opportunity. And I just had a doctor in the farm store the other day from North Carolina, and one of the big hog processing plants down there had a big outbreak of COVID-19. He worked in the emergency room, and so when they had this huge outbreak, all of a sudden they went to looking at where people were, and they went to this one double wide trailer that had 28 people living in this double wide trailer, and those are the kinds of living conditions because they're trying to. It's not so much about pay; they're just trying to pinch their pennies to bring aunt and uncle and cousins and stuff to this country. And so you've got a perfect storm here. You've got all these people crowded together. They're under the stress of being in a foreign country, under the stress of eating poorly, under the stress of being packed into to home quarters. They don't even get space when they leave the plant, to give their body a little bit of rest. So they're just immersed in this confluence of things. and that's a fragile system. Whereas small plants, so here's the deal. Just imagine if instead of having 153,000 person mega processing facilities to handle 98% of America's food, just imagine if we had instead 25,000 very, very small plants, community-based, 20 to 30 people, spread all over the countryside, processing that food. The resilience of that would just spin circles around the centralized, amalgamated mega processing facilities we have. So, this is the same thing that happens, when you have an epizootic in animals, with the factory farming, avian influenza comes through. If salmonella comes into a Wisconsin factory egg farm that supplies, all this, you have major disruptions. But at least if you have decentralized, if you have the production and processing spread out across the landscape at a lower density, I mean, we could even say food production distancing. Social distancing is the new word. What we've got is the complete anti-distancing with the amalgamation and centralization in the farming and food sector. And what we need to do is break that down so that people eat locally, and you have a lot of small facilities instead of a handful of great big facilities. So, the way to bet is that we've just seen, the first rumblings of additional, issues breaking down, and chances are we're going to see continued breakdowns in that industrial system.
Yeah, well, maybe not a minute too soon, but what you're talking about sounds illegal or something, because it sounds so commonsensical. It's something that maybe we should do. So, I worked with a local crew a couple years back. They were trying to bring in a local slaughterhouse because we had two choices. One was over a state line, which is impossible, and the other was, an hour and a half away and always full. So just seeing the NIMBYism and the level of complexity and just the rules at the local level, plus the state level, plus the federal level, it's pretty daunting. You got to be pretty eager to do something like that.
Oh, absolutely. It's very daunting, and it's gotten, and there's within the inspection bureaucracy, there's absolutely a prejudice against small-scale facilities. And I'll never forget, I was testifying before a congressional hearing convened by Congressman Dennis Kucinich when he convened it after that. Remember that California slaughterhouse that had the undercover video where they were fire hosing and poking the cows with the front end, forklifts to get them to stand up to get into the kill chute. He convened this hearing on, what can we do about America's meat supply? And I was one of about 12 people who were called to testify. And I was in the afternoon, and the morning group, of course, started out with the whatever he is, the commissioner of the Food Safety Inspection Service. And I about fell out of my chair when he told the committee, the congressman, how efficient FSIS was, because he had the pounds of product, the pounds of meat, pounds of tomatoes, pounds of product that the inspectors saw, and the fact that the inspectors are now seeing way more pounds of product per hour than they did a long time ago, because we've gotten rid of all those little community inefficient processing facilities. Man, aren't we great? He pounded his chest. This is the greatest thing. We've gotten rid of those little inefficient community plants. And now, look at how many pounds of product the inspectors, are being able to look at per hour. And, it struck me, why should I be surprised that a country that worships at the altar of efficiency over effectiveness would also worship at the altar of efficiency in its regulatory agencies rather than effectiveness. There's a big difference between efficiency and effectiveness. You can be efficient going down the interstate 100 miles an hour, but if you're going the wrong way, that's not very effective.
Maybe that's all the way back to if vaccines sound very, very efficient, but be a little bit more effective if we had everybody just get their immune system tuned up.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So in the scheme of things, big picture, food resiliency, all of that stuff, I feel encouraged that the trends are going in the right way. And I'll tell you what's the most encouraging. We just had a bonfire the other night, just last night, and had this brilliant young people working here, interning and all that. The level of genuine interest of young people who are saying, this is something I want to do, I find very encouraging. Boy, I don't know what I'm doing. So they're learning from the wrong guy here, but it feels good. It feels good to see that level of interest, and it's been really helpful to have, of course, your accumulated wisdom coming out and helping us all learn that. And everybody should get, if you have any interest at all, you should totally get this because it covers the logic, the finance of it. That if you can't cash flow this thing, it's probably not going to work out anyway. So that trickles all the way down to what kind of cars you're driving and how often you go to the movies and all that.
Yes. Yes.
Good stuff. And you've got another book coming out and then another one. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, well, the one that came out about a month ago, the title is Beyond Labels. And it's my first co-written book with Dr. Sita Kalla. She's a PhD in nutrition. And, her story is such, we're come from she's not a farmer. And she almost died with autoimmune diseases eating the standard American diet. And in fact, her family was planning her funeral when she was about, 30 years old. And she just had this epiphany one day and said, look, I can't wait on a doctor to fix me. The doctors aren't doing anything. I got to fix me. So she started down this path of diet, lifestyle, changed everything about herself. And today she's a vibrant 39-year-old Energizer bunny, and she's a health coach. Now, I mean, her recovery was so dramatic. People started talking, and you see what happened? And so now she's a bit of a health coach. So we've written this book, Beyond Labels, which is an attempt to try to get people to realize that their health journey is beyond a label. If all you know about food is what's written on a label, you don't know very much. And until we step out and move beyond labels, we're going to be stuck in that whole, disconnected ignorance kind of paradigm. And so it's a trajectory. We call it a health continuum, where we start with, the person that's eating out of the gas station, and we end with a person that's growing their own herbs in their own herb garden. And you can come into that continuum wherever you want to. It's gotten some great traction, and it's just a great book. So the interesting thing about the book is it's divided into like 57 practical bites. That's the chapters. We call them practical bites. And unlike most co-authored books, it's not one monologue. It's a dialogue. So it's written like a play. You have Sina, she says what she wants, and then I say what I want. And so it's like you're sitting in an audience and you're listening to this farmer and this PhD nutritionist have a conversation. And we didn't know if it would work, but all the feedback so far, reviews have been 5-star gold for that, to be able to sit in on that conversation. It's a real unorthodox format, but it works, and it seems like people really, really enjoy it. Beyond Labels.
Beyond Labels.
And then I've got another one coming out toward the end of September. It's another co-authored called Polyphase Designs, and it's a diagram book of all of the mobile portable infrastructure that we've designed and used here at Olive Farm. And the diagrams are done by a former apprentice who's an engineer. I did the text, he did all the diagrams, and it could be a coffee table book. It's that pretty. It's a landscape layout, so it's longer than it is high. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's 4-color. It's horribly expensive to print, but it's the pictures, and it's got a lot of information, like how do you the different like terminology with like axles. You're going to buy an axle. There are different types and weight classes, and how to how to build a pole shed using batter boards to square it up. Just all sorts of really practical, construction and build out type of things. And so we're pretty excited about it. We plan to offer, pre-orders probably about the 1st of September, and we're supposed to have it in hand on September 21st. So we're pretty excited about it.
Well, fantastic. I'm looking forward to both of those. And of course, we'll put links to those and help get the word out about those. So Beyond Labels and Polyface Designs. How do you have time? Where do you find time for all this?
Well, I've got a great team. Yeah. And we do have winters. So, I spend time in winter, doing things, and I type real fast. So, yeah, I'm a fast writer. So I'm in this winter. My next project is going to be, you're going to love this one. My working title for it is The Homesteader's Livestock Manual. And the thing is, Chris, back, 35 years ago when I started giving presentations, I'd give a presentation and everybody would say, "Oh, that's so cute, but how does it scale up?" Today, I give a presentation, people say, "Wow, that's incredible, but I've only got 10 acres. How does it scale down?" And so I'm realizing that this homestead movement, as you mentioned, you said your family moved out of the city to New Jersey, but you didn't say they got 100 acres. You're the aberration. Most of these folks are getting 2 acres, 5 acres, 15 acres. It's small acreages, but you can do a lot in a small acreage. So this book will be all about handling livestock in a very small acreage. Since we've done both, when we were small, we were more glorified homesteaders. Now we're really commercial and we have scale. I can move seamlessly between small and large, but the average person has a hard time moving seamlessly. When I talk about I'm moving, herds of 400 cows on 4 acres a day, I can move easily down to 2 cows on a 20th of an acre, but the average person can't normally make that leap. So this book is gonna bring it down to a homesteader's level. Hope just in time for this whole kind of urban exodus movement.
Well, I think it's perfect timing. Perfect. People are moving out of cities, and not a minute too soon, and probably for a lot of good reasons. Yeah, COVID just woke them up to why. And once I think people get on that bandwagon, of course, they're going to be hard to get them off again. So at least maybe I'm talking my own book, but that's how I see it. And this is a much better life and lifestyle and quality of life, and it gives us an opportunity to observe and interact and be part of all these things that are happening out there. I feel less like I'm a director of anything, and more I'm a member of a band somehow.
Yes. Yeah, a tribe. You're a member of a tribe.
Yep, just a member, and they're all working. All these animals, they're working hard every day.
That's right.
I don't have to manage them at all.
Yeah, that's right.
So, well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure as always. And if there's any last words or anything you want to say, just let me know. And otherwise, we'll do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll be real excited to get your progress report, see how you're getting along. You're gonna learn a lot in the next 3 months. It's gonna be a really exciting time.
Thanks. It's already been exciting, but it has been. It has been. And so thanks for that. And we'll come down and visit you. Evie and I will come and love to see your place. That's definitely on my list of things to do. So
Please do. Love to have you.
All right. Well, be well and write well, and we'll do this again.
Thank you, Chris. Look forward to it.
Me too.